In a cramped apartment, a single mother is drowning in crisis after losing her job. Unpaid bills are stacked sky high. She has only $147 left, and Christmas is just 3 days away. Her daughter Emma has seen everything. Heartbroken for her mom, she decides that very night to write a letter to Santa, asking for one thing, a job for her mother. But what no one could have expected is that this very letter would end up in the hands of someone who would completely change both of their lives. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The smell of burnt toast filled the tiny apartment in South Boston. Sarah Miller stood at the kitchen counter staring at the stack of red envelopes she'd been avoiding for 3 days. Her hands trembled as she opened the first one, the electric bill. Past due. The second rent notice. Final warning. Mom. Sarah quickly shoved the bills into a drawer and turned around, forcing a smile. Emma stood in the doorway wearing her favorite purple pajamas, the ones with tiny stars that were getting too small. Her daughter's brown eyes, so much like her father's, watched her with that knowing look. That look that said Emma saw everything, understood everything, even at 9 years old. "Good morning, sweetheart." Sarah's voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "Want some pancakes?" Emma walked closer, her bare feet patting softly on the worn linoleum. "Mom, are you okay?" "Of course, honey. Why wouldn't I be?" "Because you were crying last night. I heard you." Sarah's chest tightened. She knelt down in front of her daughter, brushing a strand of blonde hair from Emma's face. "Sometimes grown-ups just have hard days, that's all. But we're going to be fine." Emma bit her lip the way she always did when she was worried. "Is it because you lost your job?" The words hit Sarah like a punch. She'd tried so hard to hide it, to keep Emma from worrying. But kids always knew. They always felt it when their parents were drowning. "You heard the phone call," Sarah whispered. "I didn't mean to listen, but the man was really loud, and he said—" Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "He said you were fired." Sarah pulled her daughter into a tight hug, feeling Emma's small arms wrap around her neck. "It wasn't my fault, baby. The whole company is closing down. But I'm going to find something else, I promise." Before Christmas, the question hung in the air. Christmas was in 3 days. Sarah had $147 in her bank account, rent due in a week, and a utility shutoff notice threatening to cut their power on December 27th. She'd already sold her wedding ring last month to pay for Emma's winter coat. "We'll see," Sarah said, which was the closest she could come to honesty without completely breaking down. That night, after Sarah had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, on the couch, Emma lay awake in her bed. The streetlight outside cast shadows on her wall, making the room feel bigger and lonelier than usual. She could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's TV through the thin walls, playing some late-night show. Emma reached under her pillow and pulled out her piggy bank. She'd been saving for months, doing small chores for neighbors. She counted the coins carefully, $8.47. Not enough to help her mom. Not enough for anything, really. Her eyes drifted to the small Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, visible through her open door. They'd decorated it last week before everything went wrong. Before the phone call that made her mom cry in the bathroom for an hour. Emma thought about the letters to Santa that her teacher, Mrs. Johnson, had helped the class write last week. Most kids asked for video games, new bikes, American Girl dolls. Emma had asked for a new set of colored pencils because she knew her mom couldn't afford much this year. But that was before she understood just how bad things were. Emma slipped out of bed and tiptoed to her desk. She pulled out a piece of lined paper from her school notebook and picked up her favorite purple pen. Her hand hovered over the paper for a moment. Then she started to write. "Dear Santa, my name is Emma Miller. I'm 9 years old and I live in Boston. I know I already wrote you a letter at school, but I need to write another one because things changed. I don't want colored pencils anymore. I don't want toys or games or anything for me. My mom lost her job 3 days ago, and she's really sad. She tries to hide it, but I hear her crying at night. She thinks I'm asleep, but I'm not. My mom is the best person in the world. She makes the best brownies, and she sings to me when I'm scared, and she works so hard. She deserves to be happy. She deserves to not worry about bills and food and if we'll have to move. So all I want for Christmas is a job for my mom. A good job where they're nice to her and pay her enough so she doesn't cry anymore. That's all. I promise I'll be good forever if you can help. I'll eat all my vegetables and I'll do my homework without complaining, and I'll never ask for anything ever again. Please, Santa. Please help my mom. Love, Emma." She read it 3 times, her eyes blurring with tears. Was it okay to ask for something so big? Did Santa even help with stuff like this? Emma folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope she'd taken from her mom's desk drawer. She wrote Santa Claus North Pole on the front in her best handwriting, even though she knew that wasn't a real address. She glanced at her mom, still sleeping on the couch, one arm draped over her eyes. Then Emma grabbed her winter coat and put it on over her pajamas. Her boots were by the door. The hallway was dark and cold. Emma's heart pounded as she crept down the 3 flights of stairs to the building's front entrance. She pushed open the heavy door and stepped out into the December night. Snow had started falling soft and quiet. The street was empty except for a few parked cars. Emma walked to the corner where the big blue mailbox stood under a streetlight. She had to stand on her tiptoes to reach the slot. "Please work," she whispered, pressing the envelope against her lips before sliding it through. Please work." The letter disappeared into the darkness of the mailbox. Emma stood there for a moment, her breath making little clouds in the cold air. Then she ran back to the apartment, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. Back in bed, she pulled the covers up to her chin and squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't know if Santa was real. Most kids at school said he wasn't. But she had to believe. She had to hope that somewhere, somehow, someone would read her letter and care enough to help. Across town, in a glass tower overlooking Boston Harbor, James Carter stood at the window of his penthouse apartment. Below, the city sparkled with Christmas lights, red and green and gold. Families walking home from late dinners, couples holding hands, a world he watched but never quite belonged to. His reflection in the glass showed a man who looked younger than his 48 years, sharp jawline, dark hair, just starting to gray at the temples, expensive suit he hadn't bothered to change out of, but his eyes looked old, tired. His phone buzzed. A text from Anne, his assistant. "Don't forget about the charity event tomorrow evening. Hope Community Center. You committed 3 months ago." James sighed. He'd forgotten, which wasn't surprising. He forgot most things that didn't involve quarterly earnings and board meetings. He typed back, "Do I have to?" Her response came immediately. "Yes, it's good for your image, and it's Christmas." Christmas. The word felt hollow. James had spent the last 15 Christmases alone, unless you counted the expensive bottle of scotch he usually opened around midnight. He'd spent them in hotels in Singapore, in his office, reviewing contracts once, on a yacht off the coast of Greece, with business associates whose names he barely remembered. He'd never spent one with family. He'd never had family. The memory came before he could stop it. St. Joseph's Home for Children, December 1987. He was 11 years old, sitting on his narrow bed while the other kids traded the small gifts the volunteers had brought. He'd gotten a used book about dinosaurs and a pair of socks that were 2 sizes too big. He'd written a letter to Santa that year too, hidden it under his pillow instead of mailing it because he was too old to really believe, but still young enough to desperately hope. "Dear Santa, I know I'm probably too old for this, and you're probably not real, but I don't have anyone else to ask. I don't want toys. I just want someone to love me, a mom or a dad or anyone who wants to keep me. I promise I'll be so good. I promise I'll never cause trouble. Please, I just want to belong somewhere." No one ever came. No family ever chose him. At 18, he'd aged out of the system and found himself alone in the world, with nothing but a fierce determination to never feel that powerless again. So he'd worked, studied, built a tech company from nothing, and sold it for billions. Now he had everything: penthouses, cars, more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. And he was still that 11-year-old boy writing letters to someone who would never answer. James turned away from the window and walked to the bar cart. He poured 2 fingers of scotch, then stopped, put the glass down without drinking. Tomorrow he'd go to the charity event. He'd smile for the cameras, write a check, and leave as quickly as possible. That's what he always did. Hope Community Center sat in a renovated church building in Dorchester. James arrived at 6:30 p.m. on December 23rd, pulling up in his Audi while Anne waited by the entrance, clipboard in hand. "You're late," she said. "Traffic. You live 15 minutes away, and there's no traffic on your route." James gave her a look. Anne had worked for him for 12 years and had stopped pretending to believe his excuses around year 3. She was 52, fiercely competent, and treated him like the difficult child he sometimes became when forced into social situations. "They're waiting inside," Anne said. "Director Martinez is very excited about your visit. There are about 50 kids here tonight. You're supposed to read some of their letters to Santa, help pass out gifts, take some photos. Smile. Look human. You remember how to do that." Barely. Inside the center was decorated with construction paper snowflakes and strings of lights that blinked erratically. The scent of hot chocolate and cookies filled the air. Children's voices echoed off the high ceiling, laughing, shouting, singing along to jingle bells playing from someone's phone. Director Martinez rushed over a small woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of warm smile that made James uncomfortable. "Mr. Carter, thank you so much for coming. The children are so excited." "Happy to be here," James lied smoothly. "We have a tradition volunteers read the children's letters to Santa out loud, and then we try to fulfill as many wishes as we can. Would you like to help with that?" Before James could politely decline, Anne cut in, "He'd love to." 5 minutes later, James found himself sitting in an oversized red chair that was supposed to make him look festive, but really just made him feel ridiculous. 50 children sat cross-legged on the floor in front of him, their faces turned up with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. "Hello, everyone," James said. His voice came out stiff formal. A few kids giggled. One whispered, "He doesn't sound like Santa." "I'm not Santa," James said, "but I'm helping him out tonight. Let's see what you all asked for." He picked up the first letter from the pile. A boy named Marcus wanted a basketball. Simple. Next was a girl named Sophie who wanted her cat to come back. Apparently, it had run away last month. That one made his throat tight. He read through 6 more letters. Video games, dolls, a microscope, a trip to Disney World. Normal requests. The kind of things kids should want. Then he pulled out a letter written on lined notebook paper folded carefully and covered in small smudges that looked like tear stains. The return address said Emma Miller, with an address in South Boston, the same neighborhood where James had spent 2 years in a group home when he was 15. He opened it slowly, started reading out loud. "Dear Santa, my name is Emma Miller. I'm 9 years old and I live in Boston." His voice held steady through the first few lines. Then he got to the part about her mother losing her job, about hearing her cry at night. His throat started to close up. "My mom is the best person in the world. She makes the best brownies, and she sings to me when I'm scared, and she works so hard." The room had gone completely quiet. Every child was listening now, their faces serious. James's hand started to shake. "So all I want for Christmas is a job for my mom, a good job where they're nice to her." He couldn't finish. The words blurred on the page as tears filled his eyes. James blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure, but it was no use. A tear rolled down his cheek. The children stared at him with wide eyes. One little girl in the front row, maybe 6 years old, raised her hand timidly. "Yes," James managed. "Are you going to help Emma's mom?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He looked at this child, at her innocent faith that adults could fix things, that wishes could come true. He thought about 11-year-old James writing his own desperate letter. He thought about all the years of loneliness he'd built his empire to fill. His voice cracked. "I'm going to try." He stood abruptly, the letter clutched in his hand. "Excuse me," he mumbled to Director Martinez and rushed toward the exit. Anne found him outside 5 minutes later, sitting on the front steps in the December cold without a coat. "That was quite a performance in there," she said carefully. "It wasn't a performance." "I know." She sat down beside him. "You want to talk about it?" James showed her the letter. Anne read it silently, her expression softening. "This hit close to home," she said. "It wasn't a question. That could have been my letter. I wrote almost the exact same thing when I was a kid." James's voice was raw. "Nobody helped me. Nobody cared. This little girl, she's watching her mother struggle, and all she wants is to fix it. She's 9 years old, and she's trying to save her mom." "So what are you going to do?" James looked at the letter again, at Emma's careful handwriting, at the little heart she'd drawn at the bottom. "I'm going to help them." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I can't just ignore this." Anne was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know, you could just write a check. Make a donation. That's what most people in your position would do." "No." James shook his head firmly. "That's not enough. This kid, Emma, she doesn't want charity. She wants her mom to have dignity, a real job, a real chance." He paused. "I know what it's like to be pitied, to be the poor kid everyone feels sorry for. I won't do that to them." "So, what's the alternative?" James stood up, his mind already racing through possibilities. I need to find them. Sarah and Emma Miller, South Boston. Then I need to figure out what Sarah's qualifications are, what kind of work she did before. And then I create an opportunity, something real, something she earns. Anne gave him a long look. This is more complicated than just helping someone. You know that, right? You're talking about inserting yourself into their lives without them knowing who you really are. I'll tell them eventually, once Sarah has the job and knows she earned it legitimately. And if they find out before then, if they feel manipulated. James didn't have an answer for that. All he knew was that the weight of Emma's letter in his pocket felt like both a burden and a purpose. For the first time in years, he felt like he was supposed to do something that mattered. Find them, he told Anne. I need everything you can dig up on Sarah Miller, work history skills, financial situation. But be discreet. Anne sighed but nodded. She knew that tone. James had made up his mind. It took Anne less than 24 hours to compile a comprehensive file on Sarah Miller. James sat in his office on Christmas Eve morning, reading through the information with growing respect. Sarah Miller, age 35, widowed 2 years ago when her husband died in a car accident, had worked as a senior accountant at Redstone Financial Group for 8 years until the company declared bankruptcy 3 weeks ago. No family in the area except for Emma. Degree in accounting from Boston University. References from former colleagues describing her as meticulous, dedicated, and brilliant with numbers. Before Redstone, she'd worked at 2 smaller firms, consistently earning promotions and praise. She wasn't just competent, she was genuinely talented. The financial picture was grim. Savings depleted after her husband's death and medical bills. Credit cards maxed out. Behind on rent. But despite all of it, Emma's school records showed perfect attendance, good grades, participation in after-school art programs. Sarah was clearly doing everything she could to keep her daughter's life stable. James stared at the photo Anne had included, a professional headshot from Sarah's LinkedIn profile. Blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, green eyes, a warm smile that didn't quite hide the tiredness underneath. She looked like someone fighting a war she was slowly losing. The phone on his desk buzzed. Mr. Carter, you have. Not now, Anne. It's Christmas Eve. I'm heading out in an hour. Fine. But I need one more thing first. A pause. Then what? Create a false identity for me. Something simple, believable. An independent recruiter or headhunter. Someone who would legitimately reach out to Sarah about job opportunities. James, please. I need to do this right. I can't just show up as James Carter, billionaire. She'd never accept help from someone like me. She'd think it was charity. Another long pause. James could practically hear Anne's disapproval through the phone, but finally she said, Fine, give me 2 hours. Sarah spent Christmas Eve trying to make the apartment feel festive while her mind spun with anxiety. She'd applied to 17 jobs in the past 3 days, sent out her resume to every accounting firm in the Boston area, along with several in surrounding suburbs. So far, 2 auto rejections and silence from the rest. She was decorating sugar cookies with Emma when her phone rang. Unknown number. Mom, you should answer it, Emma said. Maybe it's about a job. Sarah's heart jumped. She stepped into the bedroom and closed the door. Hello. Hi, is this Sarah Miller? A man's voice, deep and professional. Yes, this is she. My name is Peter Davidson. I'm an independent recruiter here in Boston. I hope I'm not interrupting your holiday. Sarah's pulse quickened. No, not at all. How can I help you? I've been reviewing candidates for several of my clients, and your resume caught my attention. I understand you recently left Redstone Financial. The company closed, Sarah said carefully. I didn't leave by choice. I understand. And I'm sorry about that. I know several people affected by Redstone's bankruptcy. But your work history is impressive. 8 years in one place, consistent promotions, excellent references. That tells me you're someone worth talking to. Sarah sat down on the edge of her bed, gripping the phone. What kind of position are you looking to fill? I have 3 clients looking for senior-level accountants. Different types of firms, 1 mid-sized consulting company, 1 nonprofit, and 1 tech startup, all offering competitive salaries and benefits. But I'd like to meet with you first. Get a sense of what you're looking for and which opportunity might be the best fit. This was too good to be true. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of careful budgeting and watching for scams, went on high alert. Mr. Davidson, can I ask how you found me? Of course, your LinkedIn profile primarily. And I've been networking with several former Redstone employees. Your name came up more than once as someone with exceptional skills." That made sense. Several of her old colleagues had been reaching out, trying to help each other find new positions. Maybe someone had passed along her information. "When would you want to meet?" Sarah asked. "I know tomorrow is Christmas, so obviously that's out. Would December 26th work, say 10 a.m.? My office is downtown near Park Street." Sarah thought about Emma, about the bills, about the rent notice, and the almost empty refrigerator. She thought about her daughter's letter to Santa, which she'd found tucked in Emma's desk drawer 2 days ago while looking for a pen. The letter had broken her heart. "That works for me," Sarah said. "Excellent. I'll text you the address. And, Sarah, I know this is a difficult time, but I have a good feeling about this. Your skills are exactly what my clients need." After he hung up, Sarah sat there for a long moment. Then she opened the bedroom door and found Emma standing right outside, clearly having been listening. "Was that about a job?" Emma asked, her eyes huge. "Maybe. I have an interview the day after Christmas." Emma's face lit up with pure joy. "I knew it. I knew it would work." "Knew what would work?" "Nothing." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's waist. "I just knew something good would happen. You're going to get this job, Mom. I know you are." Sarah hugged her daughter tight, letting herself feel a tiny spark of hope for the first time in weeks. James hung up the phone and immediately felt like he'd made a terrible mistake. His hands were shaking. He'd lied to Sarah Miller, or rather Peter Davidson had lied, created a false identity, reached out under false pretenses, manipulated the situation to engineer an interview that wasn't real. But what choice did he have if he'd called as James Carter and said, "I read your daughter's letter to Santa and I want to help"? She would have hung up. Or worse, she would have accepted out of desperation and spent the rest of her life feeling like a charity case. This way, Sarah would go to the interview thinking it was legitimate. She'd present her qualifications, her experience, her skills. James would evaluate her fairly well, as fairly as possible, given that he already knew he was going to do everything in his power to help her. Then she'd get a real job offer with a real company, something she could be proud of. The fact that James would be pulling strings behind the scenes was just logistics. "You're overthinking this," Anne said from the doorway. She'd let herself into his penthouse, which she did whenever she decided he needed supervision. "I'm lying to her." "You're giving her an opportunity. There's a difference." "Is there?" Anne sat down across from him. "Look, you're going to meet Sarah tomorrow. You'll see for yourself whether she's qualified. If she's not, if she somehow fooled all those former employers and references, then you don't make her an offer. Simple. And if she is qualified, then you connect her with Whitmore Consulting. Rachel's been looking for a senior accountant for 3 months. The position is real. The salary is real. The benefits are real. The only thing that's not completely transparent is how Sarah got the interview." James ran his hand through his hair. "What if she finds out later? What if she discovers I'm not really Peter Davidson, independent recruiter, that I'm James Carter and I orchestrated this whole thing? Then you tell her the truth, that you read her daughter's letter and it moved you, that you wanted to help, but you knew she wouldn't accept charity, that everything you've done has been to give her a chance to succeed on her own merits." Anne paused. She might be angry at first, but if you've been honest about her qualifications, if the job is real and she's doing well, maybe she'll understand. Or she'll feel manipulated and betrayed. That's a risk. Anne stood up. But doing nothing, letting Emma and Sarah struggle when you have the power to help, that's worse. Sometimes the right thing to do is messy and complicated. Welcome to being human instead of a robot CEO. After Anne left, James sat alone in his apartment and thought about Emma's letter. About the little girl who loved her mother so much she was willing to give up her own Christmas wishes. About Sarah fighting to keep her daughter's life stable, even as her own fell apart. He thought about 11-year-old James alone in a group home writing letters that no one would read. He'd make this right. He had to. Sarah barely slept that night. She got up at 5 a.m. on December 26th and tried on 4 different outfits before settling on her navy suit, the one she'd worn to job interviews 8 years ago when she'd landed the position at Redstone. It was a little snug now, but it still looked professional. Emma woke up and insisted on helping her mom get ready. "You need your lucky earrings," she said, producing the small pearl studs Sarah's mother had given her. "How do you know these are my lucky earrings?" "Because you wore them the day you got your last job. You told me." Sarah's throat tightened. Emma remembered everything. Every story, every detail. You're right. Thank you, sweetheart. By 9:15, Sarah was on the red line heading downtown. The train was mostly empty the day after Christmas. She rehearsed answers to potential questions in her head. Why did you leave Redstone? What are your strengths? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The address Peter Davidson had given her was a professional office building near Boston Common. Sarah found the right suite number on the directory, Davidson Recruiting Solutions, 4th floor. She took the elevator up her stomach, doing flips. The reception area was small but tastefully decorated. A young man at the desk smiled at her. You must be Sarah Miller. Mr. Davidson is expecting you. Go right in. Sarah walked into the office and stopped short. The man who stood up from behind the desk was not what she'd expected. He was younger than he'd sounded on the phone, late 40s maybe, tall, with dark hair and striking blue eyes. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. Sarah, thank you for coming. He extended his hand. Peter Davidson. His handshake was firm, but his palm was slightly sweaty. Nervous, that seemed odd for a recruiter. Thank you for calling me, Sarah said. They sat down across from each other. James Peter had her resume on the desk in front of him, along with a few other papers. He seemed to study her for a moment before speaking. I want to start by saying I've reviewed your work history in detail, and I'm impressed. 8 years at one company, consistent performance, reviews several complex projects successfully completed. That's exactly the kind of stability and expertise my clients are looking for. Thank you. But I'm curious about something. You could have left Redstone several times over the years. You had offers according to your references. Why did you stay? Sarah hadn't expected that question. Loyalty, partly. They took a chance on me when I was 27 and fresh out of night school. My husband had just been diagnosed with cancer, and I needed a stable job with good insurance. Redstone gave me that and never made me feel like I owed them for it. Your husband passed away 2 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Sarah's voice remained steady even though her chest hurt. She'd learned to talk about David without breaking down mostly. And you have a daughter, Emma, 9 years old. Sarah's maternal instincts immediately went on alert. How do you know my daughter's name? Peter James looked flustered. It's on your Facebook profile. I do basic background research on all candidates. I should have mentioned that up front. I apologize. That was plausible, but something felt off. Sarah couldn't put her finger on what exactly. Just a feeling. I need to ask you something directly, Peter said, leaning forward. What are you really looking for in your next position? Money, advancement, stability. Be honest. The question was so blunt it threw her. Most interviewers danced around that topic. Sarah decided to match his directness. I need enough money to support my daughter and keep a roof over our heads. I need a position that won't disappear in 3 months. And I need... She paused, surprised by what came next. I need to feel like I'm doing work that matters. Redstone started as a company that helped small businesses with their finances. By the end, we were helping hedge funds hide losses. I want to go back to the first thing. Something shifted in Peter's expression. His eyes softened, and for a moment, he looked almost sad. That's a rare answer, he said quietly. It's an honest one. They talked for another 40 minutes. Peter asked about her technical skills, her experience with different accounting software, her approach to problem solving. The questions were thoughtful and specific. This wasn't some cursory interview. He actually seemed interested in understanding how she worked. Finally, he sat back in his chair. Sarah, I'm going to be straight with you. I think you'd be an excellent fit for one of my clients, Whitmore Consulting. They're a mid-sized firm that works primarily with nonprofits and small businesses, helping them optimize their finances and long-term planning. It's good work with good people. Sarah's heart raced. What's the next step? The position is Senior Financial Analyst. Salary range is $85,000 to $95,000 depending on experience. Full benefits including health insurance. Some flexibility for remote work. They'd want you to start in early January. That was $30,000 more than she'd been making at Redstone. Sarah tried to keep her expression neutral, but her hands were shaking. I'd like to set up an interview with Rachel Whitmore, the CEO, for next week. But I want you to know I'm recommending you strongly. I think this could be a really good match. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Thank you so much. After Sarah left, James sat at his desk with his head in his hands. The interview had gone well better than well. Sarah was sharp qualified and exactly what Rachel needed at Whitmore. There was no question he'd be making the recommendation. But something had happened during that conversation that James hadn't anticipated. He'd started to care about Sarah Miller as a person, not just as Emma's mother or as a project to assuage his guilt. The way she talked about her late husband with grief that was still fresh, but not debilitating. The way her voice changed when she mentioned Emma, softer, warmer. The way she'd been honest about needing money, but also needing purpose. James had interviewed hundreds of people over his career. He could usually tell within 5 minutes whether someone was genuine or performing. Sarah had been completely, almost painfully genuine, which made what he was doing feel even more dishonest. His phone buzzed. Anne. How did it go? Good. She's perfect for Whitmore. Setting up the meeting with Rachel. And how do you feel about it? James stared at the question, then typed, like I'm in way over my head. The next week passed in a blur for Sarah. The interview with Rachel Whitmore went even better than the one with Peter Davidson. Rachel was a warm, enthusiastic woman in her 50s who'd started Whitmore Consulting 20 years ago with a mission to help small organizations stay afloat. We're not going to make anyone rich here, Rachel had said honestly, but we do work that actually helps people, and I need someone who understands that making a difference is more important than maximizing profits. Sarah had nearly cried. 2 days later, on January 2nd, Rachel called with a formal offer, $90 000 salary, full benefits, 2 weeks vacation to start. Sarah could begin on January 8th. When she hung up, Emma was sitting on the couch doing homework. Sarah just looked at her daughter for a long moment. What? Emma asked. I got the job. Emma's shriek of joy could probably be heard in New Hampshire. She launched herself at Sarah, both of them ending up in a heap on the floor, laughing and crying at the same time. I told you, Emma kept saying. I told you Santa was real. Sarah didn't have the heart to explain that Peter Davidson was not in fact Santa Claus. Let Emma have her magic a little longer. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table and did something she hadn't been able to do in months. She made a budget that actually worked. Rent covered, utilities covered, groceries covered with money left over. She could even start rebuilding her savings. For the first time since David died, Sarah felt like she could breathe. 3 months passed. Sarah threw herself into work at Whitmore with an intensity that surprised even Rachel. She streamlined their accounting processes, identified areas where they were hemorrhaging money, and helped 3 of their struggling nonprofit clients get back on stable financial footing. I don't know what magic Peter worked to find you, Rachel said one afternoon, but you're the best thing that's happened to this company in years. Sarah smiled, but felt an odd twinge. Peter Davidson had checked in once after she got the job, a brief phone call congratulating her and wishing her well. Since then, nothing. Which was normal, probably. Recruiters moved on to other candidates, other positions. But sometimes she thought about that interview. About the way Peter had looked at her when she talked about wanting work that mattered, like he understood something most people didn't. Emma was thriving too. Her grades had improved, she'd joined the school art club, and she'd stopped waking up in the middle of the night worried about money. She talked constantly about the magic letter she'd sent to Santa. I think Santa sent Mr. Davidson to help you, Emma declared one evening. Don't you think so, Mom? Maybe, Sarah said, smiling. But as winter turned to spring, something started nagging at Sarah. Little inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. She'd tried to find Peter Davidson's website or LinkedIn profile and came up empty. That was strange for a recruiter. They usually had significant online presences. She'd asked around in her professional network if anyone knew him. No one did. Then there was the strange coincidence of Whitmore's largest client being a tech company called Carter Technologies. Sarah had done some work on their account and discovered that the CEO, James Carter, sat on Whitmore's advisory board and had been a significant early investor. She'd looked up James Carter out of curiosity, self-made billionaire orphan turned tech mogul, notoriously private. The few photos she found showed a good-looking man in his late 40s with dark hair and blue eyes that looked oddly familiar. Sarah told herself she was being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. One afternoon in late March, she was delivering a report to one of Whitmore's clients, the CEO of a small software startup. As she was leaving, the CEO said, "Thank your Mr. Carter for the recommendation, by the way. We wouldn't have known about Whitmore without him." Sarah stopped. "I'm sorry. Which Mr. Carter?" "James Carter. From Carter Tech. He suggested we work with Whitmore about 6 months ago. Said you had the best financial analyst in Boston." The CEO smiled. He wasn't wrong. 6 months ago, that would have been December, right around the time Peter Davidson had called her. Sarah's mind raced. She thanked the CEO and left, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. That evening, she did what she'd been avoiding: deep research. She found old articles about James Carter interviews profiles, read about his childhood in foster care and group homes, about his determination to succeed despite having nothing. Then she found a photo from a charity gala 2 years ago, James Carter standing next to his assistant, Ann Morrison. Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd seen that assistant before. Not in person, but... She pulled up her email and searched for Peter Davidson, found the message he'd sent with his office address. Then she cross-referenced the address with Carter Technologies' office space. Same building, same floor. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. Peter Davidson didn't exist. It had been James Carter all along. Sarah didn't sleep that night. Her mind went in circles trying to make sense of it. Why would a billionaire go through such an elaborate scheme to help her? How did he even know she existed? Then she remembered the Christmas Eve charity event. Emma's letter. Sarah had found that letter in Emma's desk drawer back in December, had read it with tears streaming down her face. She'd assumed Emma had never sent it, that it had been just a private wish. But what if Emma had sent it? What if somehow, some way, James Carter had read that letter? The pieces started fitting together. The too convenient phone call the day after Christmas. The recruiter who didn't exist online. The connection to Carter Technologies. Peter Davidson's nervous mannerisms during the interview, like he wasn't used to lying. James Carter had read Emma's letter and decided to help. But instead of just writing a check or offering charity, he'd created an entire false identity to give Sarah a job she thought she'd earned legitimately. Part of her was touched by that. The lengths he'd gone to, the care he'd taken to preserve her dignity. But another part, a bigger part, was furious. He'd lied to her, manipulated her, made her think she'd gotten this job through her own merit, when really it was all orchestrated by some billionaire who felt sorry for her. Every accomplishment of the past 3 months suddenly felt tainted. Had Rachel really chosen her because she was the best candidate, or had James Carter pressured her to hire Sarah? Did her coworkers respect her work, or were they just playing along with the boss's charity project? Sarah felt sick. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work. She dropped Emma off at school and then did something she'd been planning all night. She drove to Carter Technologies headquarters. The building was even more imposing in person, all glass and steel reaching 30 stories into the Boston sky. Sarah walked into the lobby like she belonged there, found the directory, and headed for the top floor. The elevator ride up felt endless. What was she going to say? What did she even want from this confrontation? The answer came to her as the doors opened: the truth. She wanted the truth, all of it, without any more lies or manipulations. The receptionist on the executive floor looked up with a professional smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see James Carter." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell him Sarah Miller is here. He'll want to see me." The receptionist's smile faltered. She picked up the phone and spoke quietly. Then her eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Carter will see you. Just a moment." A woman in her 50s appeared, the assistant from the photo. Ann Morrison. She looked at Sarah with an expression that was part resignation, part sympathy. "Miss Miller, please follow me." They walked through a maze of offices and conference rooms. Ann didn't say anything, but Sarah could feel her discomfort. Finally, they reached a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. James Carter stood at those windows with his back to them. Sarah would recognize that posture anywhere she'd seen it in her interview as Peter Davidson. "Come in," he said without turning around. Ann left, closing the door behind her. Sarah stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, James turned around. He looked tired, older than his photos, and guilty. So guilty. "I suppose you figured it out," he said. "Peter Davidson doesn't exist." "No." "You read Emma's letter." "Yes." "And you decided to play God with our lives." James flinched. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You lied to me. You created a fake identity, manipulated me into thinking I got this job fairly, when really it was all just, what, your guilt project?" "No." James stepped forward, his expression pained. "Sarah, please listen. Why should I listen to anything you say? You've done nothing but lie since the moment you called me. I wanted to help, that's all. I read Emma's letter and his voice broke. It destroyed me. Because I wrote that same letter when I was a kid. I begged Santa for someone to help my mom, and no one came. No one cared. I couldn't let that happen to Emma. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. So you decided to play hero to swoop in and save the poor single mom. I wanted to give you a chance. A real chance, not charity. By lying to me, by making me think I earned something, when really you just arranged it all behind the scenes. Sarah's voice cracked. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? I thought I was good enough. I thought Rachel hired me because I was qualified. Now I don't know what's real and what's just part of your elaborate scheme. Everything about your job is real, James said urgently. Rachel needed a senior analyst. I knew about the opening because I'm on Whitmore's board, but I didn't tell her to hire you. I sent her your resume through Peter Davidson, and she made her own decision. You got that job because you're brilliant at what you do. How can I possibly believe that? Because it's true. You've been there 3 months, and you're the best thing that's happened to that company in years. Rachel told me that herself. Your work speaks for itself, Sarah. Your money speaks louder. Sarah wiped angrily at her eyes. God, I'm so stupid. I actually thought, for a minute there, I thought maybe I'd gotten lucky, that the universe had finally thrown me a break. But it was all fake. The opportunity was real. Your skills are real. The only thing that wasn't completely honest was how you found out about the position. That's not a small thing, James, or Peter, or whoever the hell you actually are. James closed his eyes, pain evident on his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. How did you want me to find out? Did you plan to tell me eventually, or were you just going to let me keep believing the lie? I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead. That's obvious. They stood there in terrible silence. Finally, Sarah said, I need to think. I need to figure out what to do about this job, about Emma, about all of it. Please don't quit, James said. Please, you're doing incredible work. Rachel and her clients need you. I'll decide what's best for me and my daughter, not you. Sarah turned toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Stay away from us. Don't call, don't send gifts, don't try to help anymore. You've done enough. She left before he could respond, practically running to the elevator. Once inside, she finally let the tears come. Emma knew something was wrong the moment Sarah picked her up from school that afternoon. Her mom's eyes were red and puffy, and she had that look, the same one she'd had in the days after Dad died. Mom, what happened? Nothing, sweetie, just a hard day at work. You're lying. Emma's voice was small but certain. Did you lose your job again? No, nothing like that. I promise. They drove home in silence. Emma went to her room to do homework, but couldn't concentrate. She kept thinking about her mom's face, about the way her hands had trembled on the steering wheel. Around dinner time, Emma heard her mom on the phone in the kitchen, talking in a low, angry voice. She crept closer to listen. Don't care what his intentions were, Rachel. He lied to me. He manipulated the entire situation. What? No, I'm not quitting. I earned this position whether he wants to admit it or not. I'm just saying I need some time to process. Emma's heart started pounding. Who was Mom talking about? Who lied? Then she heard, read Emma's letter to Santa, and decided to play hero. Emma's breath caught. Her letter, the one she'd sent to the North Pole on Christmas Eve. Someone had actually read it, but who? And how had that led to Mom getting upset? The conversation ended, and Emma scrambled back to her room. A few minutes later, Sarah appeared in the doorway. Hey, hungry? Not really. Emma looked at her mom carefully. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Did someone read my letter to Santa? Sarah's expression crumpled. She came and sat on Emma's bed, pulling her daughter close. How did you know about that? I heard you on the phone. You said something about my letter. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Did I do something wrong? Is that why you're upset? Oh, honey, no. You didn't do anything wrong. Sarah stroked Emma's hair. Your letter was beautiful. It was the sweetest, most loving thing I've ever read. Then why are you crying? Sarah took a shaky breath. Do you remember Mr. Davidson, the man who called me about the job interview? Emma nodded. Well, it turns out Mr. Davidson isn't real. He's actually someone else, a very rich man named James Carter. And he read your letter at a charity event on Christmas Eve. It moved him so much that he decided to help us. But instead of being honest about it, he pretended to be someone else so I wouldn't know. Emma tried to process this. So, Santa sent Mr. Carter to help us. No, sweetie, Mr. Carter isn't Santa. He's just a man who read your letter and wanted to help. But he did help you got your job because of him, right? It's more complicated than that. How? Emma's voice was getting louder. You needed a job. I asked Santa for help. Mr. Carter helped you get a job. That sounds like Santa to me. Emma, why are you mad at him? He was trying to be nice. Because he lied, sweetie. He pretended to be someone he wasn't. Grown-ups lie all the time. Emma pulled away from her mom. You lied to me about Dad dying. You said he was going to get better, and then he didn't. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Sarah's face went white. Emma, you lied because you didn't want me to be sad. Maybe Mr. Carter lied because he didn't want you to feel bad about needing help. Did you think about that? Emma ran out of the room before her mom could respond. She grabbed her coat and her backpack and headed for the door. Emma, wait, Sarah called. Where are you going? I need to fix this. Emma yanked open the front door. Fix what, Emma? Come back here. But Emma was already running down the stairs, her heart pounding with determination. She'd written one letter that had started all of this. Maybe if she wrote another one, or better yet, talked to Mr. Carter in person, she could fix whatever she'd accidentally broken. She had to try. Sarah stood in the open doorway, shock and panic warring in her chest. Emma had just run out into the early spring evening. It was almost dark. Where would she even go? Then it hit her. Emma was going to find James Carter. Sarah grabbed her keys and phone, nearly falling down the stairs in her hurry. She burst onto the street and looked both ways. There, Emma's purple jacket already a block away, heading toward the T-station. Emma! Sarah screamed, but her daughter didn't turn around. Sarah ran, her lungs burning. She reached the station entrance just as Emma was swiping through the turnstile. Emma, stop! Emma looked back, tears streaming down her face, but kept moving. Sarah scrambled to swipe her own Charlie card and pushed through the turnstile. The platform was crowded with evening commuters. She spotted Emma near the edge, waiting for the inbound train. Emma Miller, you stop right now. Emma turned to face her. I have to fix this. Mom, I have to talk to Mr. Carter. You're 9 years old. You can't just run off to find some stranger in the city. He's not a stranger. He helped us. The train roared into the station. Emma moved toward it, but Sarah grabbed her arm. We're going home. Now. No, let me go. They struggled briefly. People were staring. Sarah didn't care. She pulled Emma away from the platform, heading back toward the exit. That's when Emma twisted free and started running again straight toward the stairs leading up to street level. Sarah chased her, her phone buzzing in her pocket. She ignored it. They burst out onto the street. Emma was fast, but Sarah was desperate. She caught up at the corner, grabbing Emma's backpack. Stop. Please, baby, just stop. Emma whirled around, sobbing. Why won't you let me help? I wrote the letter. It's my fault you're sad again. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. Sarah knelt down, holding Emma's shoulders. Please, let's just go home and talk about this. Her phone buzzed again. Sarah finally looked at it. 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a text. Sarah, this is James. Anne told me Emma might try to find me. Please tell me she's safe. How did he know? How did Anne know? Sarah's hands shook as she typed back, she's with me. We're fine. The response came immediately. Where are you? Sarah looked up at the street sign. Corner of Mass Ave and Boylston. Stay there. I'm 5 minutes away. No, Sarah muttered. But what choice did she have? Emma was still crying. They were both emotionally exhausted, and it was getting dark. True to his word, a sleek black car pulled up exactly 5 minutes later. James got out, his expression frantic. He saw Emma, and relief flooded his face. Thank God, he breathed. Emma pulled away from Sarah and ran to him. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I caused problems. James knelt down, catching her. Hey, you didn't cause any problems. None of this is your fault. But Mom's mad at you, and it's because of my letter, and I just wanted to help her, and now everything's messed up. Shh, it's okay. James looked at Sarah over Emma's head. His eyes were red. Can we talk, please, all 3 of us? Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to take Emma and go home and never see James Carter again. But Emma was clinging to him like he was a life raft, and Sarah realized with a jolt that her daughter had been carrying this guilt all afternoon, thinking she'd ruined everything. Fine, Sarah said quietly, but not here. James nodded. My apartment is 10 minutes away, or we can go somewhere public if you're more comfortable. Your apartment is fine. Sarah was too tired to care about propriety. They rode in uncomfortable silence. Emma sat between them, wiping her eyes, sniffling occasionally. James kept glancing at Sarah, but she stared out the window, refusing to meet his eyes. His apartment was exactly what Sarah had expected, a penthouse with a view of the harbor, minimalist furniture, expensive art on the walls. It looked like a magazine spread. Cold, empty. James made hot chocolate for Emma and coffee for Sarah and himself. They sat in the living room, Emma on the couch between them, the three of them forming an awkward triangle. "I need to explain something to both of you," James said finally. "And I need to be completely honest this time." Sarah waited. "When I was 11 years old, I lived in a group home called St. Joseph S. I'd been in the foster system since I was 6. My parents died in a house fire. I spent 5 years going from home to home, and nobody wanted to keep me. By the time I was 11, I'd stopped hoping that anyone would." Emma listened with wide eyes. Sarah felt her chest tighten. That Christmas, James continued, the group home had a party. Volunteers came and brought small gifts. Everyone was supposed to write letters to Santa. I was too old to believe, but I wrote one anyway. I asked Santa for a family, for someone to love me, for a place where I belonged. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. No one came. No family ever chose me. I aged out of the system at 18, and I've been alone ever since. I built a company, made more money than I could ever spend, and I've spent it all trying to fill a hole that nothing can fill. Emma reached out and took his hand. James looked at her small fingers wrapped around his, and tears spilled down his cheeks. "Then I read your letter, Emma, and it was like looking in a mirror, except you weren't asking for yourself. You were asking for someone else, for your mom. That kind of selfless love. I didn't know kids were capable of that. It broke something open inside me." He looked at Sarah now. "I should have been honest from the start. I should have called you and said, I read your daughter's letter and I want to help. But I was afraid you'd say no, afraid you'd be too proud to accept help from someone like me. So I lied. I created a fake identity and manipulated the situation because I thought I knew better." "You did know better," Sarah said quietly. "I would have said no. I would have told you to take your charity and shove it." James nodded. "I know, but that doesn't make what I did okay. You deserve the truth. You deserve to make your own choice about whether to trust me." "I'm still not sure I can trust you," Sarah said. "You've lied about everything." "I know, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. If you want me to disappear from your lives completely, I will. If you want to quit Whitmore and find another job without my interference, I'll make sure Rachel gives you a glowing recommendation." He paused. "But I'm asking you, begging you to believe one thing. You earned that position. Your work over the past 3 months has been exceptional. Rachel told me yesterday that you're the best analyst she's ever had. That's not me pulling strings. That's you being brilliant at what you do." Sarah wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to so badly. "Why should I believe anything you say?" she whispered. "Because I'm not lying anymore. I have nothing left to gain by lying." James looked at Emma, then back at Sarah. "I care about you both, more than I expected to, more than I probably should. And I just want what's best for you, even if that means I'm not part of your lives." Emma suddenly spoke up. "Mom, I don't think Mr. Carter is a bad person." Sarah looked at her daughter. "Baby, he made a mistake, but he was trying to help, and he did help. We have enough money for food now. You don't cry at night anymore. We're okay because of him." Emma's voice was fierce. "Maybe he did it wrong, but he did it because he cares. Isn't that worth something?" Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. When had her 9-year-old daughter become wise? Sarah closed her eyes. Exhaustion washed over her. "I need time. I need to think about all of this without either of you looking at me with those puppy dog eyes." "Take all the time you need," James said, "but please let me take you both home. It's late and you've been through enough today." Sarah was too tired to argue. The drive back to South Boston was quieter than the drive to James's apartment. Emma had fallen asleep against Sarah's shoulder. Sarah watched the city pass by and thought about choices, about pride, about the complicated mess that James's good intentions had created. When they reached her building, James got out to open the door. Sarah gently woke Emma and helped her out of the car. "Sarah," James said softly, "I really am sorry." "I know." She looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time since she'd found out the truth. He looked miserable, guilty, but also hopeful in a fragile, barely there way. "Thank you for bringing us home," she said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't complete rejection either. James nodded. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Sarah." Sarah took Emma's hand and led her inside. 3 days passed. Sarah went to work, did her job, came home. She was professional with Rachel and her coworkers, but she felt like she was moving through fog. Everything felt surreal. Emma was quiet too. She'd apologized for running away at least a dozen times. Sarah kept telling her it wasn't her fault, that none of this was her fault, but she could see the guilt in her daughter's eyes. On the fourth day, Rachel called Sarah into her office. "Have a seat," Rachel said, her expression serious. Sarah's stomach dropped. Here it came, the real truth about why she'd been hired. "I spoke with James Carter," Rachel said. Of course she did. "He told me about the situation, about Emma's letter, and his creative approach to helping you." Sarah waited. "I want you to know something, Sarah. James did send me your resume, but I had 3 other candidates for the position, all with equally strong qualifications. I interviewed all 4 of you. I chose you because you were the best fit for Whitmore, period. Not because James pressured me or paid me off or anything like that." "How can I be sure of that?" Rachel smiled sadly. "Because I've known James for 15 years. He's on my advisory board, but he doesn't interfere with hiring decisions. In fact, before you, he'd never recommended anyone for a position here. Not once. When he sent me your resume, I was surprised, but I evaluated you on your own merits. He could have." "Sarah, look at me." Rachel leaned forward. "You've been here for 3 months. You've revolutionized our accounting system. You've saved 2 of our clients from bankruptcy, and you've done it all with grace and professionalism. That's not because someone told you what to do or held your hand. That's because you're exceptional at your job. James gave you an opportunity to interview, but everything after that, that was all you." Sarah felt tears welling up. "I just don't know what's real anymore." "This is real. Your work is real. My respect for you is real. And for what it's worth, I think James made a mistake in how he approached this, but his heart was in the right place. That letter from Emma clearly meant something profound to him. He told you about his childhood. Years ago, when I first met him, James doesn't open up to many people. The fact that he shared that with you and Emma, that's significant." Sarah left Rachel's office feeling slightly less adrift. That evening, she sat Emma down for a serious conversation. "I've been thinking about Mr. Carter," Sarah said. Emma perked up. "And I think he made a big mistake in lying to us. But I also think he was trying to do something good in a really clumsy way." "So you're not mad anymore?" "I'm still hurt, but I'm starting to understand why he did it. And Rachel assured me that I really did earn my job." Sarah smiled slightly. "Apparently, I'm kind of amazing at what I do." "I could have told you that," Emma said seriously. Sarah laughed, the first real laugh in days. "Yeah, you could have. Does this mean we can see Mr. Carter again?" "Maybe, if he promises to be honest with us from now on." "I think he will. He looked really sad when we left his apartment." "You noticed that, huh?" Emma nodded. "He looked like you looked after Dad died. Like he'd lost something important." Sarah's heart clenched. Had James lost something, or had he finally found something only to have it slip away because of his own mistakes? That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah picked up her phone. She stared at James's contact information for a long time. Finally, she typed out a message. "Can we talk, just the 2 of us?" The response came within 30 seconds. "When tomorrow night, 7 p.m., there's a coffee shop on Newbury Street called Tat. Meet me there. I'll be there." Sarah set down her phone, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was going to say to James Carter, but it was time to figure out where they went from here. James arrived at Tate 15 minutes early and ordered coffee he didn't drink. He'd changed clothes 3 times before leaving his apartment, finally settling on jeans and a simple sweater. He wanted to look approachable, normal, not like the billionaire CEO who'd screwed everything up. Sarah arrived exactly at 7 p.m. She was wearing a green dress that brought out her eyes, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and nervous and tired. They sat at a corner table away from other customers. "Thank you for meeting me," James said. "I needed to clear the air." Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I've spent the past few days thinking about everything, the letter, the job, the lies, all of it. And I've realized something." James waited, barely breathing. "You weren't trying to hurt us. You were trying to help in the only way you knew how. And yes, you handled it badly. You should have been honest. But I understand why you weren't." She paused. "I would have said no if you told me the truth. I would have let my pride get in the way of accepting help my daughter and I desperately needed. That doesn't excuse what I did." "No, it doesn't. But it explains it." Sarah met his eyes. "Rachel told me I really did earn my position, and I've decided to believe her. Because the alternative, believing that my work isn't good enough, that I only got the job because of pity, that's worse than believing you made a mistake. You're incredible at your job. James said intensely, and not just technically. You care about the work. You care about helping people. That's rare. That's valuable. Thank you. Sarah's voice was soft. Emma wanted me to tell you she's not mad at you. She thinks what you did was romantic, like something from a movie. James smiled despite himself. She's a special kid. She is. And she's been through so much in her short life, losing her dad, watching me struggle, feeling like she had to fix everything. Sarah's voice cracked. That letter she wrote broke my heart. A 9-year-old shouldn't have to worry about whether her mom can pay rent. No, she shouldn't. But she does worry because she loves you. That's not a burden, that's a gift. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, I want to move forward. I want to keep my job at Whitmore and keep building a life for Emma and me. But I need to know, are you going to keep interfering? Keep trying to help in ways I don't ask for? No, James said immediately. I promise. No more schemes, no more lies. If I want to do something for you or Emma, I'll ask permission first. Good. Sarah paused. And I have a condition. Anything. I want you to be part of our lives, not as Peter Davidson or some mysterious benefactor, as James, as yourself. Emma clearly adores you, and I think you need people as much as we needed help. James felt his throat close up. You don't have to. I'm not offering out of obligation. I'm offering because despite everything, I like you. You're complicated and kind of a mess, but you're also genuine in a way most people aren't. And Emma deserves to have good people in her life. What about you? James asked quietly. What do you deserve? Sarah smiled. Maybe I deserve a friend who understands what it's like to struggle, who gets that life isn't always fair, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. I can be that friend. Then we have a deal. Sarah extended her hand across the table. James took it, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. Deal. They talked for 2 more hours, long after their coffee went cold. James told Sarah more about his childhood, about the loneliness that had defined his life, even after he became successful. Sarah told him about David, about their early years together, about the impossible grief of losing him. By the time they left the coffee shop, something had shifted between them. The anger and hurt had faded, replaced by understanding. Maybe even the beginning of trust. 6 months later, on a warm August afternoon, James sat in Sarah and Emma's living room and tried not to burn the grilled cheese sandwich he was making. Cooking was not his forte, but Emma had declared that Mr. Carter needed to learn how to make proper comfort food. It's smoking, Emma called from where she was sprawling on the couch, drawing in her sketchbook. I know. James flipped the sandwich hastily, definitely burned on one side. Sarah emerged from her bedroom, freshly showered after her run. She took one look at the smoking pan and laughed. Emma, I think you need to supervise more closely. I tried. He doesn't listen. James plated the sandwich one side golden brown, one side charcoal black, and presented it to Emma with a flourish. Ta-da! Emma examined it critically. Well, at least one side is edible. I'll take it, Sarah said, sitting down next to her daughter. She bit into the good side and made an exaggerated sound of approval. James sat in the armchair across from them, watching this scene of domestic normalcy with something like wonder. 6 months ago, he'd been alone in his penthouse, watching the city from behind glass. Now he was here, burning sandwiches in a small apartment in South Boston, and he'd never been happier. He'd kept his promise. No more schemes, no more interference. He'd become a regular presence in Sarah and Emma's lives as himself, James the person, not James the billionaire. He helped Emma with math homework, badly attended her school art shows, and had dinner with them twice a week. Sarah had flourished at Whitmore. Rachel had promoted her to Director of Financial Services last month with a significant raise. Emma was thriving too. Her grades had improved, she'd made new friends, and she'd stopped having nightmares about being evicted. And somewhere along the way, James had stopped feeling like an outsider looking in. He'd found what he'd been searching for his entire life, a place to belong. James, Emma said, interrupting his thoughts. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you believe in Santa Claus? James glanced at Sarah, who was trying not to smile. I believe that sometimes people show up in our lives at exactly the right moment, whether you call that Santa or fate or just luck. I think the important thing is being grateful for it. That's a fancy way of saying yes, Emma observed. Maybe it is. Emma went back to her drawing. James caught Sarah's eye and saw warmth there, affection, maybe even something more. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Sarah and James sat on the small balcony with glasses of wine watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "Thank you," Sarah said softly. "For what?" "For reading that letter, for caring enough to help even if you did it in the most complicated way possible." She smiled. "Emma and we're okay now. More than okay. And that's partly because of you. You would have been fine without me. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to be strong alone." Sarah took his hand. "And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're not alone anymore either." James squeezed her fingers, feeling a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the wine. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. A letter to Santa written by a 9-year-old girl who just wanted her mother to be happy. A billionaire who'd spent his life running from loneliness. A second chance at family, at connection at home. Sometimes miracles came in the most ordinary packages. Sometimes they came wrapped in lies that turned into truth. Sometimes they came in the form of a job offer, a burned grilled cheese sandwich, and a small apartment that felt more like home than any penthouse ever could. And sometimes Sarah thought looking at James and the golden evening light miracles looked an awful lot like love.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.